Welcome to Dental Nachos TV, our menu of good ideas to help you increase success, decrease stress, and most of all, reduce the number of times you feel like crying inside a day. My name is Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman. I'm so glad to be joined by my good friend, Dr. Dave Maloley, who has just hung up the handpiece and he has become a retired age dentist, the best category. So we're going to talk more about that. So thanks for being here with us, David. Let's start at the end and go back to the beginning. Tell us what you're doing now and tell us a little about your career from the start.
What I'm doing now is coaching dentists full-time. It's a hybrid between leadership coaching, business coaching. I really wanted a comprehensive and a holistic frame to work from, but that was created out of a entrepreneurial seizure when I launched a podcast called Relentless Dentist in 2013, explaining to people what a podcast was and why I would want to interview them and stepping out of my shyness. Before that, I think in my heart, I'm still a farm boy from Nebraska.
Nice.
Kind of a windy road to get to dentistry. Went to dental school at the University of Nebraska on a Army Health Professions scholarship, and that allowed me to travel the world. I was stationed in Europe for 4 years, and so that was my first career. Then I was associate for a couple of years, and then another entrepreneurial seizure where I'm like, I need my own practice, and I started a practice from scratch in 2009, which is horrible timing in hindsight. I wanted a vacation in my backyard, so we moved to the Vail, Colorado area.
Nice.
Kind of got my butt kicked for 3 or 4 years until I figured out really how to play this game, and then realized that I wasn't a dentist, so I was an entrepreneur. So
cool. I love that. I got the chance to meet you and see you speak. You're an awesome speaker at the Mark Costas Dental Success Center. I was just on a podcast with Mark the other day, and he said, and I also want to thank you. I listened to an episode of The Relentless Dentist a few years ago where you were interviewing a coach who helped a lot of high functioning individuals. And I've dealt with this where, hey, you can't make it to the gym 5 days a week. You might as well not go at all. And that really helped me because that's not a good way, but us type A's are like, and I was like that, so that really helped me. And Mark was saying, he's doing 16 practices, and sometimes you can't return to dental practice. So it's important to make a good decision with that. And that's why I want to ask a little bit about your coaching. I do want to say I'm a positive guy, but dreams don't come true because I wanted to play in the NBA, David. This is not a regulation basketball. It's my daughter's. Just looks good that I can comment. But I only grew to this height. But I use basketball analogy a lot of dribbling, passing, scoring. And a lot of times players think they need coaching in an arena where the coach is like, you're fine over there, but you have a huge hole in your game over here.
No.
Walk us through a little bit what you see with dentists. Where do they need coaching? Where do you often find it's most helpful? What are some of their pain points?
Well, really, I feel like my model is what I was longing for in 2010, 2011, and didn't know where to find that thing. I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be everything to everyone, but I had no idea what to do. And so I was, I think, nothing to no one.
Yeah.
I had a few raving fans, but it wasn't the dream practice, at least initially, that I wanted it to be. So I think it all starts with how you show up to work in the morning. And so that's why I start with a high performance model. Like, you have to lead yourself. Otherwise, any sort of alignment of team looks like a dictatorship because all you do is spouting ideas and words and wondering why they're not completing them and the way that you want them to be. So I always start with that. How are you showing up to work? There were times during my career where I could barely get out of bed because of personal struggle, emotional struggle, financial struggle.
Yeah.
And I suffered in silence. So I think job one is to kind of look yourself in the mirror and realize that you're kind of playing an impossible game and we weren't giving a blueprint, and to ask for help because it's out there, or there's lots of generous people like yourself that are willing to help pave the path. But ultimately you have to do the heavy lifting, the dribbling, the chest passes and all those sorts of things.
I mean, what do we do for ourselves in our personal life? I was on the Peloton. I think, okay, I'm going on the Peloton. This isn't exactly how I think, but it's the end of the year. And I say, I go on the Peloton, maybe I'll have pizza tomorrow. At least that's some sort of like, hey, I'm going to do this. I just listened to an awesome podcast with Tim Ferriss and Jerry Seinfeld, one of my favorite people, who talks about rewarding yourself and asking for help. One of my biggest problems with dental school is they make you believe that you should learn things like dribbling and passing without ever teaching them to you. And then the game is about that. So this asking for help, if we can inspire someone watching, whether they're watching now in Dental Nachos or later, people coming to you, how do they get over that asking for help hurdle? Because that's a big one for dentists. someone's sitting there thinking, I got personal struggles, financial struggles. I'm just not happy. Is this how it's supposed to feel? I'm a big fan of that, David. Some things are supposed to feel intense. I was at my office yesterday, hygiene checks, this and that, but you're not supposed to feel like it's toxic. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about how do these dentists get over this hurdle of asking for help?
I think it's swallowing your pride. I think there's something about that white coat and the doctor in front of your name and maybe your name on the door that makes you want to be a superhero every day. And I certainly suffer from that from time to time because we got the achievement down. We know that we want more and better as time goes on. We're used to proving ourselves to get in dental school and out of dental school.
Sure.
But then you acquire a practice and you're like, I have no idea what's going on here. I don't understand the
Right.
numbers. I don't understand how to not have my vision hijacked by the toxic hygienists that came with the practice. And
Right.
so I think what I'm seeing in the industry, and I wonder if you are as well, is that there's a lot more candor of my path wasn't paved with gold. Early on in my career, I would go to these meetings and I would just see the highlight reel and I was like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I could never do
Yeah.
that. And instead of feeling better after spending $3,000 in 3 days, I felt worse.
I'm
And
so with you
so,
with that. If I just pause you for a minute, that's what I
yeah,
try to make CE and learning real. Because if you just see people dunking on others, never getting dunked on, I always use that example. And it's just a shame because it doesn't make people feel better. It makes them feel inferior. And, we're so dramatic as dentists. Show your failures. How about just you showed when you were annoyed yesterday? I was annoyed when one handpiece started squirting out water for no reason. I don't know why it did that. My assistant did. So show when you're annoyed, I think is just a middle range thing we can bond over. I always say happiness is decreasing your daily annoyance. And I think it's important because it's so nacho nuts to me, David, that we expect dentists. I have two small humans that live in my house, a 6 and a 2-year-old. And I say that having a dental practice like having a 3-year-old that never grows up. And some of that's awesome. And some of that is annoying and exhausting. So when they ask you for help, and I love these stories, tell me about a client who's like, I wasn't sure I even wanted to talk to you, David. And now I
mhm.
couldn't imagine living my life without them. What are some of the things you do in coaching that get them to a better place?
I think we always have to start with the organization is not limited by its opportunity, it's limited by its leader. And
Yeah.
we have to deliver that bitter pill up front.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the coaching journey is a lot of the blame game. And if I just get the right team and the right location, the right signage and the right website, then everything magically aligns and I have this practice. So I'm not that abrupt in the messaging typically, but ultimately we have to get there. Otherwise, because the dentist is always the bottleneck or the lid on the organization.
Right.
And if I could get them to level up their mindsets and skill sets, and a lot of it's the soft skills that we think don't deliver hard profits, but yet these are the same people that are always telling me that I can't find good people. There's always gossip and drama, blah, blah, blah. Well, we haven't given them a framework so they even know what targets they're trying to hit or they can't see them. So I think that first part is realizing that the limits of an organization are based on the leader, and an organization always takes on the personality of its leader. That's not very comfortable, but
Yeah.
it's the thing that really sets us free ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, people say I want feedback, but sometimes like feedback can be uncomfortable and hurtful, but you need it to move forward. You need that with physical fitness, you need it with saving money, you need that in your practice. And sometimes you just need someone from outside your box. I was listening to a great podcast on the Peloton and Ariel who's with me. She, I think, read this book, Your Atomic Habits. And they actually,
Mhm.
Entree Leadership, look at their year in review. They have 10 minutes from all these awesome people. They had the Atomic Habits author talking about, dentists have a real hard time delegating anything. And then they feel incredibly stressed, like reading emails or doing this. And I'd rather take the time and be patient to help someone learn how they can do a task so I can do others. But have you found that with dentists that they sometimes take on too many tasks, complain about it, but then don't do anything to delegate some of them?
100%. I grew up, my father was a small business owner, and he would literally say, if it's going to be done right, it has to be done by me. And I came in with that same, you call it perfectionism because it seems like this honorable thing, but it's an excuse. It's fear a lot of times because they're going to screw up. But meanwhile, in my case, it either wasn't getting done, so it was a zero performance, or 50% of the time. And I realized that I was always the bottleneck, and there's only so much I can do. And so the shift for me was realizing that I'm limiting them. People in an organization, at least your A and B players, want some level of mastery, and I was cheating them.
Right.
I know what it's like to work in a company as an employee where I'm like, I'm so overqualified for this job. I wish they'd let me do a little bit more. And typically we as dentists are doing the exact same thing to our people, yet we're saying we want to create this incredible place. So we have to bridge that gap, like you said, and figure out what does effective delegation look like. And a lot of times it needs to show up like autonomy. It's your zone. You can be the CEO of the hygiene op today or moving forward, but this is what it looks like when done and done well. And this is how it integrates into the rest of the big picture of running a dental practice. There's some numbers that we have to pay attention to, even at an entry level job. And so slowly dispensing that out, to use a dental term, I think is the important piece, so that they don't get frustrated and upset and leave, and you don't get frustrated because these things are always dropping to the ground and breaking. The art of effective delegation starts with trust, and the art of an effective culture starts with trust. And sometimes you have to realize that the reason you don't trust them is because you don't trust yourself. And it goes back to that inner work I was talking about at the very beginning.
So many critical and great valuable points there. And a lot of dentists, first, I don't think we learn how to learn and we don't learn how to teach. In dental school, if it was like my daughter walking, first time she fell, a dental school instructor would be like, you never get it. You'll never get it. You might as well sit for the rest of your life. So they don't teach you how to learn or teach. And then also they overvalue this perfection thing, which is really a disease. Because I always say in my lectures, I start off with this, because I have a dentist. They say, and because I'm kind of into my hair. So I say, okay, if you go get your haircut, do you want the best haircut possible the stylist could do? You want the best haircut possible? Every dentist goes, oh yeah, I want the best. Is it okay if it takes 7 hours? No. Well, that's life, right? That's life. If you went to get a turkey sandwich, you want the best they can do? Yes, it takes them 3 hours. So this is where dentists, I think, unfortunately, to use a kind of a popular term, get gaslit by dental school. And where do you see in some of your success cases, I know everyone's a work in progress, when dentists can relinquish some of that control, what are some of the benefits to them, either personally, professionally, or financially?
Just getting work and worry off your plate allows you to actually go home at the end of the day. A lot of us have had periods in our career where we take this baggage home with us and we can't even tend to it. It's just this open browser window that interferes with being a parent or whatever, right? And so like the evolution of being able to harvest not just more revenue, but more time and meaning, that's part of it, because you're watching these people ascend into their job where something that they were incapable of in Q1, now they own it in Q3. Like that to me is the thing that really fills me up, is watching people who I'm mentoring, even if they're on my payroll, like grow and blossom. And if you teach somebody what true leadership looks like, that true leadership is about choice and change and not this industrial age control and compliance model, you get the feedback like, oh, that stuff works. Like, yeah, because we're dealing with humans in an organization, not an organization that happens to employ these humans to do these little robotic and assembly line tasks.
And then
like
your
Henry
team feels
Ford
better
did.
what they do. And I mean, I kind of known for this JBN thing, which really just means, David, we're the same generation. Like if one dentist does a PFM crown and you do a zirconia crown, don't tell them on Facebook they're the worst dentist you've ever seen. That's JBN. But I also have JB Real, just be real. Is there enough jobs for dentists? Is the debt overwhelming? These are just real things. But then yesterday, my last day of dentistry of the year, I said about JBP, just be proud of what you've done this year, dentist. You've existed during what I hope is a once in a lifetime pandemic. I don't know. So, I mean, one of the times too is then dentists have this weird problem with giving themselves any credit. And it's just so toxic, because one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I talk with people a lot, and not surprising, I get to know people. I tell our patients would feel so upset if they knew how hard dentists took to work in their mouth, right? I mean, if they knew how dentists feel, they didn't put on this facade. And I say that's really being more authentic, because our patients really like us. But for some reason, where do you see in 2021, if someone popped in right now, was listening to me talk with you, where do you see like a menu of 3 or 4 things dentists could do to kind of make their 2021 better or get it started on the right foot?
I think a lot of times I see dentists optimizing for the wrong things. Sometimes we're chasing a bottom line. Sometimes it's wanting to be liked. I think there's a middle ground there, and that's creating the best place to work in your community. I think that's the competitive advantage. And if we don't optimize for that, then it gets whatever's left over. And so we don't have a meeting rhythm. And so know that we're not choosing purpose over profits. We're not choosing culture over cash, or whatever you want to think about it, because it drives to the bottom line, but it's just playing the long game.
Right.
And a lot of the business teachings and nomenclature about best month, best month, best month. And that's, I think, is doable, but you have to make sure that you have the right infrastructure. And if you've got this revolving door and can't attract the best talent and you don't spend any time training, eventually the business will break or the doctor will break. And then we wonder, like, why do we have all these dentists in despair? It's because like we're running this marathon as a sprint. So I think shifting the paradigm to optimizing for a great place to work and understanding what people really need and want. It's not this like laissez-faire, let them run loose.
Well, I think
No,
the marathon is
people are longing
such
for
a good one. I'm
structure.
going to use that because dentists do that all the time. And if you're a Peloton rider, you could feel like, okay, I'm going to try really hard for 5 minutes, but you have a 45-minute ride.
Yeah,
Dentists
right.
would do that all the time. Like, I did mile 1 in 6 minutes. Well, there's 25 other miles that you have to get through. And, I was talking with Mark the other day, I just hope that this pandemic resets dentists to thinking, instead of thinking of people down the street as competitors, they're really your collaborators. And we can build a better dental world together that cares about each other. This craziness of making us go through the dental student Hunger Games, fighting and competing over stuff that's worthless, memorizing stuff you can Google, competing over who can make the best bite rim, even though you don't even ever make a bite rim again. These are toxic games they run dental students through. So
and they never go away.
Yeah, I love that mindset. And, as we wrap up a little bit, I would want to ask you this question, because I now that you're coaching and you're kind of taking a step back from the clinic, I find one of the biggest challenges is working with people in different life situations, right? Dental school, you're with a bunch of dental students, and then you come out and maybe it's working with someone who's a single parent. Maybe it's your partner. I'm partners with my brother, but I have 2 children. He's not married. That's a different life situation.
Sure.
It doesn't have to do anything with socioeconomics. So is there any tips you could give a dentist for I think that's really hard to go from dental school or residency into private practice where you're working with people of all different educational levels, socioeconomic levels, family levels. And I find that to be one of the biggest challenges. What are some things dentists could do to make that a little bit better for them?
I think the short answer is you have to unapologetically go after what you want. So that means eliminating distractions of other people's opinions, the fear of missing out, all of these things that are readily available for us. We have to put blinders on and say, that's not what I want. There was a dental student on Nachos just a second ago asking, like, what should I do? Yeah. And I don't think it's a fair question to ask until you've done the internal work, because some people there was a time where I wanted multi-mega practice, right? And then the life slammed me up against the wall and said, hey, listen, you wanted a lifestyle practice. You just got your vision hijacked by something that seemed more sexy, but this is what you wanted all of along. So I respect people that unapologetically go after what they want. If they want the big multi-mega practice, fine. Right. But if we go chasing other person's visions and versions of success, ultimately we're going to hit some sort of brick wall that will wake us up. It might be a health scare. It might be a wealth scare. It might be a lipstick letter on the window, on the mirror. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but you get the idea. Like, I think we have to be in alignment with what we really want. And if we don't, it's hard to hustle and innovate at the same time. So if we don't harvest that time out and say, like, am I on track or am I not? Or are the things that I wanted at the beginning of 2021 still the things that I want in July of 2021? It's easy to drift. And that few degrees of drift extended off over a decade is a bad recipe. So
that's such great value. And I've listened to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk, and I really like his Gary V podcast. He's like, build a life that you want to live in. He says, as an entrepreneur, he's known people who do $3 million a year and are happy, then do $8 million a year and are miserable. And he said, why'd you even do that? Right. So I love you sharing this. If people want to reach out, you have a great Facebook group, a lot of content that you do. Dave, share how can they reach out to you if you're watching this and want to get help, find out more about you, or join your new Facebook group?
I think that Facebook group, Dentist Best Year Yet Challenge, is the best place now, because I had a shift. I think my life's a series of these events where I'm like, I need to stop doing this and do more of this. Yeah. And I get lots of DMs and messages of dentists who are really struggling, but the information is available. Right. And the information isn't unique to me. So I want to slowly dispense curriculum that helps dentists kind of shift these thinkings that can create lots of toxicity over time. So I'm doing lots of Facebook Lives, releasing some of my coaching curriculum there. And that's kind of the best place to see if it resonates with you or not. I love that. Just like a dental practice, I'm not for everyone, but I think the message is really something that is this understanding that we need to achieve it as dentists. We're wired that way, but it can't, if we let all this collateral damage happen and we don't systematically reduce stress and increase fulfillment, then something will eventually break down.
For sure,
And
yeah,
the
and just
same
like
with
an
the hips.
athlete that exercises too much or
Yep.
overuse, I love that. And we are same dental generation. You're rad right now. I'm still a medium age dentist, but we didn't have any of this when we got out of dental school. So take advantage of it and just learn. Not you're going to have people that disagree. You're going to have people that have debate. For new dentists, maybe you're allergic to Facebook for everything else, but use it for your career, because stuff like you did, people like you did, are putting out awesome content. So thrilled to have you on Dental Nachos TV. Really appreciate it. If anybody else
Appreciate
is
you, Paul.
watching, wants to be a guest on Dental Nachos TV, just text TV to 215-543-6454. Text TV to 215-543-6454, or reach out to us at dentalnachos.com. Thanks, guys.